She had $10.47 left in the zippered pocket of her grandmother's purse when she saw him sitting on the ground outside MedFirst Pharmacy on the corner of Beatty's Ford Road at 9:23 on a Wednesday night. He was old. His back was pressed flat against the brick wall between the pharmacy door and a rusted newspaper box that hadn't held a paper in 6 years. His coat was thin. His shoes had no laces. She had been walking for 7 blocks in October air that cut through cotton like it wasn't there. And she still stopped. She unzipped the pocket, took out the crumpled $10 bill, the only bill she had, pressed it into the man's hand without saying a word, and kept walking. She did not look back. She did not know his name. She did not know that by 7:14 the next morning, a black limousine would be parked outside her apartment building on Beatty's Ford Road, and the driver would ask for her by her full name. Constance Okafor was 48 years old and weighed 121 pounds, because she had been skipping dinner 4 nights a week for the past 11 months, so her son could eat twice a day. She stood 5'4" in a pair of black flats she had bought from a Goodwill on South Boulevard for $1.50. The left sole had a crack that let water in when it rained, and it had rained 3 times that week. She wore a gray cotton jacket over a white blouse she washed by hand every Sunday night in the bathroom sink with a bar of soap that cost 60 cents. The blouse was clean, the collar was pressed, her nails were trimmed short, and her hair was pulled back in a wrap. She tied the same way her mother had taught her in Enugu when she was 9. Tight at the base, folded twice, pinned once. She worked 2 jobs. The first was a cleaning position at the Marriott on West Trade Street, where she arrived at 5:45 every morning and cleaned 14 rooms before noon. The second was a 3-hour evening shift restocking shelves at a Dollar General 6 blocks from her apartment. Between those 2 jobs, she earned $1,740 a month. Her rent was $875. Her son Kofi's school supplies, bus pass, and food cost $410. The electric bill ran $96 in October. What remained was what she used for everything else: medicine, soap, the 60-cent bar she washed her blouse with, and the $3.25 she spent once a week on rice and tomato paste, so she could cook a pot of jollof on Saturday afternoons. That jollof rice was known on Beatty's Ford Road. Not advertised, known. Constance cooked it in a dented aluminum pot her mother had shipped from Nigeria in 2004, wrapped in newspaper and packed between 2 folded blankets inside a suitcase that arrived at Charlotte Douglas International Airport with 1 broken wheel. The pot had a burn mark on the left side where the handle met the rim, and Constance had never tried to clean it because her mother told her the mark meant the pot had memory. She cooked with palm oil she bought in small bottles from a West African grocery on North Tryon Street, and she added a pinch of smoked crayfish that she kept in a sealed jar above the refrigerator. On Saturdays, by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the smell reached the hallway, and by 4 o'clock it reached the stairwell, and by 4:30 there would be a knock on the door, sometimes 2, sometimes 5. She never charged. She never turned anyone away. If the pot was not yet empty, she served. The thing Constance carried with her everywhere, in the zippered pocket of the same purse where the $10 bill had been, was a thin gold bracelet. It was not valuable by any jeweler's measure. The clasp was bent. One of the 3 links had been soldered shut with a slightly different shade of gold that caught the light differently if you held it near a window. Her grandmother, Nkechi Okafor, had worn it every day from 1971 until the morning she died in Enugu in 2009. Constance's mother gave it to her at the funeral and said, "She wore this the day she walked 12 miles to the market to sell the last of the yams so your father could go to school. Don't ever sell it. Wear it when you forget what you're made of." Constance had not taken it off since. Her ex-husband Gerald had asked her to sell it once, in the 3rd year of their marriage, when he said they needed the money for a television. She said no. He asked again. She said no again. He did not ask a 3rd time, but the way he looked at the bracelet after that changed, and Constance noticed. Gerald left on a Tuesday. He took the car, the savings account, $4,211.16 that Constance had built over 9 years, and the lease to the house on Remount Road. He did not take Kofi. He did not ask to. Constance moved into the apartment on Beatty's Ford Road 3 weeks later with 2 suitcases, the aluminum pot, and her son. That was 3 years ago. She had not heard from Gerald since. Kofi was 17. He was quiet the way certain people are quiet, not because they had nothing to say, but because they had learned that the world listened to some people and not others. And they had decided to wait. He was in his junior year at West Charlotte High School. His teachers used words like exceptional and gifted in the same sentence as his name, and in April he had received a letter from North Carolina State University that said he had been admitted early to their engineering program, with a partial scholarship that covered tuition but not housing, not books, not the $4,200 in fees that were due by August. Constance kept that letter in a plastic sleeve inside her Bible. She read it on nights when the math of her life did not add up. Kofi had asthma. He had been diagnosed at age 4, and since then Constance had kept a rescue inhaler within arm's reach of him at every hour of his life. The inhaler cost $87 with the discount card from the clinic on Remount Road. Without the card, it cost $312. Constance's discount card had expired 6 days ago because the clinic required a renewal appointment, and the next available appointment was November 14th, 19 days away. Kofi's inhaler had 11 puffs left. She had counted them that morning. That was why she had been at MedFirst Pharmacy at 9:23 on a Wednesday night. She had walked in with $16.47 in her purse. Enough, she thought, to buy a single over-the-counter bronchial inhaler that the pharmacist on Beatty's Ford Road had once told her cost $14.99. She set the money on the counter in coins and crumpled bills and asked for the inhaler by the name printed on the box. The pharmacist, a man with a name tag that read Terrence and a pen clipped to the chest pocket of his white coat, looked at the pile of money on the counter. He did not count it. He did not touch it. He looked at the money, then he looked at her dress, then he looked at the screen in front of him and said, "That one's been discontinued. The replacement is $22.99. He said it the way a person announces a bus schedule. There was nothing in his voice. That was the problem. Constance asked if there was anything else, anything cheaper, anything at all. Terrence typed something on the screen without looking up and said, "Not in that category. You could try the clinic on Remount." She told him the clinic's next appointment was November 14th. He nodded. He did not offer a solution. He did not suggest she call another pharmacy. A woman in a blue puffer jacket standing 2 customers behind Constance shifted her weight from one foot to the other and looked at the ceiling. The security guard near the front door folded his arms and looked at the floor display of Halloween candy. Nobody said anything. Constance gathered her coins from the counter. She put them back in the zippered pocket one at a time. She thanked Terrence. She walked out. The air outside the pharmacy was 41 degrees. October in Charlotte does not warn you when it drops. It simply drops, and you find out when your hands stop working properly. Constance zipped her jacket to the neck and started walking south on Beatty's Ford Road toward her apartment. 7 blocks. She had walked this route so many times she could measure it by landmarks instead of street signs. The laundromat with the broken neon O, the church with the marquee that still said, "Easter services, he is risen," 6 months later, the empty lot where someone had planted sunflowers in June that were now brown and bent at the stem. The wind came from the north, and it carried the smell of wet asphalt and something metallic from the rail yard 3 blocks east. The crack in her left shoe let the cold in with every step, a small, sharp reminder that landed on the ball of her foot and stayed there. She passed a bus stop where a woman sat alone under the shelter holding a sleeping toddler against her chest. The woman's eyes were closed. The bus was not coming. The Route 11 stopped running at 9 p.m. on weekdays. Constance knew this because the Route 11 was the bus she took to the Marriott 6 mornings a week, and tomorrow morning she would not have the $1.75 fare. She would walk 42 minutes if she left by 4:50 a.m. Kofi had his AP Physics presentation on Friday. He had been preparing for 2 weeks. The presentation required him to stand in front of his class for 12 minutes and explain wave interference patterns. He had practiced in the kitchen 3 nights ago, speaking to Constance as though she were a room full of engineers, and she had sat at the table with her hands folded and listened to every word without understanding most of them, and understanding completely that her son was becoming something she had never been allowed to become. His inhaler had 11 puffs left. If he used 2 a day, his minimum on cold days, he had 5.5 days. The presentation was in 2. She passed the pharmacy sidewall, and that is when she saw him. He was sitting on the ground between the pharmacy entrance and the newspaper box. His legs were stretched out in front of him. His hands were in his lap, palms up, the way a person sits when they have stopped trying to keep warm. He wore a dark coat that was too large for his frame, and his head was bowed forward. He was old. She could not tell how old in the dark, but his hands had the stillness of someone who had lived past the point of rushing. Constance stopped. She looked at the man. She looked at the pharmacy door behind him, the same door she had just walked out of with nothing. She unzipped the pocket of her grandmother's purse, took out the $10 bill, and pressed it into his open palm. She closed his fingers around it. She did not say, "God bless you." She did not say, "Take care of yourself." She said nothing. She zipped the purse shut and walked the remaining 7 blocks home in the cold, with 47 cents to her name and no bus fare for the morning. That night, Kofi was asleep by the time she got home. His inhaler sat on the kitchen counter next to a glass of water and an open textbook, AP Physics, Chapter 11, Harmonic Motion. She picked up the inhaler and shook it gently. The rattle inside was thin. She set it back down and stood in the kitchen for a long time, without turning on the overhead light, just the small lamp on the counter that cast a yellow circle across the textbook, and the glass of water and her son's handwriting in the margins of a page about oscillation. She made him a plate from what was left in the refrigerator, rice and 1 egg, fried in the last tablespoon of oil, with a pinch of salt and a slice of onion she cut so thin it was almost transparent. She covered the plate with a paper towel and left it on the counter for the morning. There was a notice on the floor near the front door. She had not seen it when she walked in. It was a printed letter from the management company, slid under the door while she was out. The letter informed her that she had 72 hours to bring her account current, $347 past due, or vacate the premises. The letter was dated that day. The 72 hours started at midnight. At 10:47 p.m. there was a knock on the door. Constance opened it to find Pauline. Pauline Mensah Owusu was 71 years old and had lived in apartment 4C, directly across the hall, for 13 years. She was from Kumasi originally, had come to the United States in 1989, and had worked as a seamstress, a home health aide, and for 11 years as a cook at a church kitchen on LaSalle Street, before her knees gave out. She was the kind of woman who noticed things and held them. She noticed when Constance's lights were off by 8:30, which meant the electric bill was close. She noticed when Kofi wore the same jacket 3 winters in a row. She noticed things and said nothing until the moment arrived when saying something mattered. She stood in the doorway holding a thermos of ginger tea and a small container of groundnut soup with rice. "I made too much," Pauline said. Constance took the food. She thanked her. Pauline did not leave. "I saw you walking home tonight," Pauline said. "From the pharmacy," Constance nodded. "I also saw the man you gave your money to." Constance said nothing. "Do you know who he is?" "No." Pauline pressed her lips together the way she did when she was deciding how much to say. Then she said, "I do." She came inside. She sat at the kitchen table. She told Constance a story. The man's name was Chief Kwadwo Mensah. He was 78 years old. He had founded Mensah Bright Development Corporation in Accra in 1981. The company built hospitals, schools, and commercial properties across 4 West African countries, and had expanded into the United States in 2006. His personal holdings were valued at $340 million. He had a house in East Legon in Accra and a residence in South Charlotte that he had not slept in for 9 months. Pauline knew him because her late husband, Emmanuel Owusu, had been a foreman on one of Mensah's hospital projects in Kumasi in 1993. She had cooked for the crew. She had met Chief Mensah twice, once at the project launch, and once at a funeral 4 years later. She did not expect to ever see him again. But she had seen him 3 weeks ago, sitting on a bench outside a pharmacy on North Tryon Street. and again last week on Beatty's Ford Road, and tonight outside Medfirst, sitting on the cold ground with no one beside him. What Pauline told Constance next made the $10 feel like something else entirely. Chief Mensa had a granddaughter. Her name was Abana. She was 17 years old. She had asthma. On the evening of January 7th, 14 months ago, Abana walked into a pharmacy in the cantonments district of Accra with 23 cedis in her hand and asked for a rescue inhaler. The pharmacist told her the inhaler cost 37 cedis. Abana was 14 cedis short. She asked the pharmacist to please give her the inhaler, and she would bring the rest the next morning. The pharmacist said no. Abana turned and walked out of the pharmacy. She made it 31 steps down the pavement before her chest locked, and she sat down on the curb and could not breathe. A taxi driver saw her fall forward. The ambulance arrived in 22 minutes. Abina died on the pavement outside that pharmacy at 8:41 p.m. She was 14 cedis short. Chief Mensa buried his granddaughter in a white dress she had picked out herself for her senior class photograph. He paid for an entire pediatric respiratory wing at Corlebu Teaching Hospital. He established a foundation in Abana's name. And then quietly, without telling his family, or his board, or his driver, he began sitting outside pharmacies, in Accra first, then in Kumasi, then after he flew to the United States to visit his Charlotte property, in Charlotte. He sat on benches, on steps, on the ground. He watched. He watched who came out with bags and who came out with nothing. He watched who looked at him and who walked past. He watched what people did with what little they had. In 9 months, across 3 cities, not a single person who walked out of a pharmacy with nothing in their hands had stopped to give him anything. Until tonight, if this story is hitting you the way I think it is, subscribe now. Because what happened the next morning is something Constance never could have prepared for. Pauline left at midnight. She told Constance one more thing before she closed the door. I made a phone call tonight. You'll know by morning whether it mattered. Constance did not sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed with the thermos of ginger tea in her hands and stared at the bracelet on her wrist and tried to understand what Pauline had told her. At 5:10 a.m., she got up, washed her face, pressed her blouse, and started getting ready for her shift at the Marriott. At 6:55, she woke Kofi for school. At 7:08, she opened the front door to leave. The limousine was black. It was parked directly in front of the building's entrance, engine running. A driver in a dark suit stood beside the rear passenger door. He was holding a small white card. When he saw Constance come through the front door, he took 2 steps forward and said, "Mrs. Okafor." She stopped. "Chief Mensa has requested your company this morning. I have been asked to drive you." Constance looked at the car. She looked at the driver. She looked back through the glass door of her building at the stairwell she had climbed every day for 3 years. She got in. The driver took her to the Marriott on West Trade Street, the same Marriott where Constance cleaned 14 rooms every morning. But the driver did not pull around to the service entrance. He pulled up to the front. A doorman opened the car door. Constance stepped out in her cleaning uniform, her black flats with the cracked left sole, her grandmother's bracelet catching the morning light, and walked through the lobby she had only ever seen from the housekeeping corridor. Chief Kwadwo Mensa was sitting in a chair near the window. He was wearing a dark suit. His shoes had laces this time. His posture was different from the man she had seen on the ground, not because his body had changed, but because the setting had. He looked like a man who owned the room. When Constance entered, he stood. He did not extend his hand. He pulled the chair across from him back from the table and said 2 words. "Sit down." She sat. He reached into his jacket and placed the $10 bill on the table between them. It was still crumpled the way it had been when she pressed it into his hand. He placed it down carefully, the way a person places something sacred. "My granddaughter was 17, he said. "Asthma." He did not say more than that for a long time. Constance did not fill the silence. 14 cedis, he said. That is what she was short. He told Constance that in 9 months of sitting outside pharmacies in 3 cities, she was the only person who had come out with nothing and given away what she did not have. He told her that his foundation, the Abena Mensa Foundation, had been searching for someone to lead its first international chapter. Not a business person, not an executive, someone who understood what it meant to count coins on a pharmacy counter and still find a way to give. He opened a leather folder that had been sitting on the table beside his coffee. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the foundation's letterhead, a gold circle with the initials AM at the center. "The position is yours if you want it," he said. "The foundation covers medication access for children with chronic respiratory conditions. The Charlotte office opens in 60 days. The salary is $74,000 a year." Constance did not speak. She pressed her fingers against the crumpled $10 bill on the table. The lobby of the Marriott moved around them, a bellman rolling a luggage cart, a woman at the front desk laughing into a phone, the hum of an elevator arriving, and none of it reached the table where they sat. "Your son," Chief Mensa said. "Kofi, the engineering program." Constance's hand went still. "The foundation has an education fund, full sponsorship, housing, books, fees. He starts in the fall." Constance pressed both hands flat on the table. She looked at the bill. She looked at the window. She did not cry. She breathed in through her nose and held it for 3 seconds and let it out slowly, the way a person does when they are trying to keep something inside from breaking the surface. Chief Mensa reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. His hand was heavy and warm and steady. He said one more thing. "She would have liked you." 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at MedFirst Pharmacy on Beatties Ford Road. It was addressed to the pharmacy's corporate ownership group. The letter informed them that Mensa Bright Development Corporation had acquired the building's lease effective November 1st, and that a new policy would be implemented across all Mensa Bright medical tenants. No patient presenting with a prescription or documented medical need would be turned away on the basis of an inability to pay the full amount. A bridge fund, administered by the Abena Mensa Foundation, would cover the difference. The first staff training session was scheduled for November 15th. It would be held at MedFirst Pharmacy, Beatties Ford Road, Charlotte, North Carolina. Attendance was mandatory. Terrence received the memo on a Thursday. He read it twice. He set it down on the counter next to his pen and did not pick it up again. The world does not always recognize what it is standing next to. Sometimes it walks past. Sometimes it folds its arms and looks at the floor. Sometimes it types something on a screen without looking up and says, "You could try somewhere else." The world is very good at not seeing, but some people are built differently. Some people carry something inside them that poverty cannot take, that cruelty cannot reach, that a cracked soul and a 60-cent bar of soap and a $1.50 pair of shoes cannot touch. They carry it the way Constance carried her grandmother's bracelet, close to the skin, every day, without explanation. You can take a woman's savings. You can take her house, her car, her husband, her dignity at a pharmacy counter on a Wednesday night. But you cannot take the thing that made her stop on a cold sidewalk and give her last $10 to a man she had never met. That thing does not live in the wallet. It lives somewhere deeper. And it is the thing the world eventually answers. Constance Okafor started her position as director of the Abena Mensa Foundation's Charlotte chapter on the first Monday of December. Her office was on the 4th floor of a building on West Trade Street, 11 blocks from the apartment on Beatties Ford Road, where she had counted coins on a kitchen counter. She kept a jar of shea butter on her desk and a framed copy of Kofi's acceptance letter on the wall behind her chair. The gold bracelet her grandmother wore from 1971 until the morning she died was still on Constance's wrist. She did not take it off. On Saturdays, she still cooked jollof rice in the dented aluminum pot, with the burn mark on the left side. The pot sat on a new stove now, in a kitchen with windows that let the light in. But the recipe had not changed. The smell still reached the hallway by 3 o'clock, and when someone knocked, she still opened the door. If you walked out of a store tonight with nothing, not enough for medicine, not enough for food, not enough for the bus ride home, and you saw a stranger on the sidewalk who looked like they had even less, would you stop? And if you had one crumpled bill left in your pocket, the only thing between you and nothing at all, would you give it? Leave your answer in the comments. I want to read it. Subscribe for more stories about the people the world overlooks, the ones who give when they have nothing, who stand when they have every reason to sit down, and who carry inside them the kind of strength that money cannot buy and cruelty cannot break. I'll see you in the next one.